Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Over It podcast. I am your co-host, Suzanne Kohlberg. Now, today's going to get interesting because I'm joined, as usual, by the fabulous Kristen Kershaw, but I'm also joined by Kristen King. So we've got two KKs in the house. And the topic for today is how to give fewer fucks. So before we say any more, if you have sensitive ears, this is not the episode for you. So before we dive into it, Kristen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I will repeat, if you are listening with small children and you want them to learn these words from you and not from other people, put some earphones in. But anyway, my name is Kristen King. I am the Give Fewer Fucks coach. I do life coaching and business coaching primarily for women who are sick and tired of having to be so fucking perfect all the time. And they actually want to create a life that is for them, that they enjoy, that isn't just them running around trying to meet other people's expectations. And so I help them do that. And it is really freaking fun. I absolutely love it. And I am located in Colorado, USA. I'm in America's highest incorporated city, which is Leadville. For those of you who are not from around here, it's about 2 hours west of Denver, but it is literally the highest city in America. It's at 10,200 feet elevation, which I think is close to 3,000 meters. It's real up there. And so that's where you will find me, up in the clouds, regathering all of the fucks.
I just got to interrupt there. I love it when particularly Americans say East Coast or West Coast, or you're like, how many hours west of this? I don't know, is it an American thing to use geography that much? Because I'm like, I have no idea. If someone says to me, if I'm asking for directions and they tell me to go east, I'm like, I'm never going to get there.
Yeah. And well, when people give me like literal directions, I'll be like, okay, Lewis and Clark, like, thank you, but is it left or right? Like, am I going toward the mountains or away from the mountains? I don't know what you're talking about. But for some folks, they do know Denver because of like the Rocky Mountains and like, history shit, whatever. But yeah, if you're like looking at the United States and like, New York's on the right-hand side of the map and California is on the left-hand side of the map, it's like 2/3 of the way toward California. So
Yeah.
if
I
that
love how you say
helps
left and right. I'm the
orient.
kind of person who gives directions. We had someone come over the other day for a play date, and I'm like, it's the house with the white car on the driveway. And it was funny because the house down from ours is actually the same number because one of their letters has fallen off the mailbox. And she nearly went into it, and her daughter's piping up going, but they don't have a white car. See, sometimes the descriptions help.
I have to tell you a story about that. So I was telling you all before we started recording, on the outside of my house, we have a bay window, and on the top of the bay window, there is a bicycle and it has lights on it. My husband is a cyclist, and this is a big cycling town. And so when I give people directions to my house, I'm like, okay, it's on 6th Street. It's the house with the bike over the bay window. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, I know the house. Well, I've had to modify this instruction because apparently on the other side of 6th Street, on the same side, like on the same, like even, number side, but like the other side of a main road, there's another house with a bike over the bay window. And I didn't know this until my friend showed up with her kids later than expected one day to hang out. And I said, hey, is everything okay? You said you were going to be here in like 2 minutes. And that was like 20 minutes ago. And she was like, so you know how you told me that you had the bike over the window and blah, 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 and just let myself in and, so on and so forth. So I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, I did. And I figured you were like out back playing with the kids. I'm like, no, I was right here the whole time. She's like, yeah, it wasn't your house. Apparently, house like that meets the same things, and their front door happened to be unlocked. And she had like sent the kids to like go find me and like play in the yard with my kids. And it wasn't until she was like killing time, like she just had her coffee down, she's like flipping through the mail on the counter, and she realized it was somebody else's name. She was like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong house.
Get out.
Gathered.
Well,
So
that
I try
takes
to be
it
more
next level.
explicit now with my directions.
It's hilarious. We
So good.
live on a very funny, like our suburb is not very grid-like. I know a lot of the houses and streets in the US are fairly grid-like, so you can have 6th and 7th and 8th avenues or streets, whatever. Ours, we live on the side of a hill, and there's lots of little sort of side streets just to the geography, but we're number 2, and our neighbor kind of around the corner is number 2 as well. but of a different street, because it branches off that way and we come down the other way into a little cul-de-sac. And we've got new couriers at the moment, and we've been here 11 years. And so this has been a recurring thing. And lately there's one guy that just can't get it into his head the number of times. And so I've opened a bag and gone, I don't remember ordering this.
No.
Thankfully it wasn't anything too, and I'm like, I soon worked out what it was. And so in the time, because it's unusual for us to actually, it was just before we went away, I think. So all our family were home. It was in early December. And it was a resealable bag, thankfully. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yep, that's the neighbors. So gave it to my son to go and run to the neighbor's place and give it to them. And then the same time, the courier dude had actually come back and parked in our driveway, and he goes, you're number 2 this, right? And I'm like, yeah, not number 2 that. And he's like, yep, I just delivered the wrong parcel to you, didn't I? And I'm like, it's all right. My son has taken it to go give it back. And he's like, and the other day he nearly did it again. He put it up and he got back to his vehicle and he went, no, I've done it again. And I'm like, how many? Anyway, at least it's only back. I know, right? He's trying to do the right thing, but Kristen, that's next level to end up in someone else's.
Imagine at least they saw the different name. Imagine if they were just like you're helping themselves to a snack or whatever, and you're turning on their TV and then they walk
opening
in like,
a bottle of wine to wait. Like, imagine.
That's the next level of giving fewer fucks.
Other people, but
so where do you guys want to start today?
Well, tell me, Kristen, about what you do as far as coaching people, because I'm curious. And so how would someone come to you as far as what might be their background and what might lead them to go, right, I'm at that point of being over it to want to make a change?
Yeah, well, so you're very right. Like when my people come to me, they are so fucking over it. They're like, we are not doing this anymore. And they don't necessarily know what they're going to do instead or how to stop, but they just know that they are fucking done. And so usually the people who work with me, it's almost exclusively women. I do work selectively with men, but most of the stuff that I focus on tends to be like issues that disproportionately affect women and like people who are socialized as women, people who identify as women in American culture. I do have clients like all over the place, but you know, most of them kind of relate to that shared experience. And the guys who come to me also see the harm in the kinds of expectations and societal pressures and like cultural roles that we sort of impose on everyone in society. And so they're interested in kind of helping to dismantle that shit from the inside out. So there's been a few, but mostly it's women, and most of them are very, very smart. They know that they're very, very smart. They are ambitious, they're high achieving, and they have been waiting for a really long time for their life to start. And they are just so tired of waiting. And there's this voice that they hear at night when they're trying to fall asleep after having had another day where they feel like they didn't get anything done and they're totally fucking it up and they're not sure how they're going to keep doing this, but they don't think they have a choice. This voice is like, there is more. This is not it. There is more than this. And they can't ignore it anymore. And that's what brings them to me. Now, they usually find me through social media. I don't like buy lists. I don't buy advertising. I don't like cold message people or any of the stuff that I find really fucking annoying when people do it to me. But like I post a ton of content on social media. I'm very active in a lot of communities that are full of women who are really like identify with that life experience. And I just put a lot of content out there and just do what I can to help a lot of people. And when people land on that, it's like, oh my God, it's like a glass of ice water after they've been in the desert. And that is what kind of leads them in to learn more about working with me. And they all have this like desire to like have a life that feels like theirs in common.
I love
not
that.
being run by someone else, right? Or
other
expectations.
Because that's what it feels like. It's like I'm running a life that someone else said was okay for me to have and is controlling, but it's not my life. It's not the life I want. It's just the one I got stuck with. Like that's something I hear a lot. Yeah.
So you were going to say something then. Sorry, we both managed to speak at the same time.
I keep muting. Just a question. Can you guys hear the dog? Oh, good. This mic's that good.
I can hear my dog.
My neighbors, they must have gone out for the day and their dog's repeatedly barking. And I'm like, I don't want it to be coming through. So thank you, Yeti. You're a wonderful microphone. What I was going to say when you were sharing is that's how I came across you. We're in a Facebook community together, and I was sharing a unfortunate incident I had, which I should have asked you, and maybe I'll ask you now, and feel free to say no, because I can edit into the end of this episode the song you made for me if you like.
Oh my God. Yes, please. You should totally do that. I enthusiastically consent.
Otherwise, while you're talking in a second, I'll go and dig it up and share sound and share it now. So basically, the story was I had a rather unfortunate response to one of my emails. And for anybody in business, we know what it's like to have people respond unfavorably when we send a marketing message. And this group that Kristen and I are in together has a hashtag UMM for uncomfortable marketing moment. I'm all for the hashtags. So I got this message, and I was, my first thought was like all the horrible things you tell yourself, where your brain goes to, like I'm a terrible person, and I email too much, and I don't know, all that stuff. And then I was like, oh, hang on, this is a perfect uncomfortable marketing moment. And I shared it in the group, and I think this is the first time you and I had ever interacted. And anyway, Kristen turned it into a song, which to this day, it's an earworm, people. So when I share it in a minute, and if you are listening to this, prior warning, if you're drinking or whatever, stop drinking and sit down, because I shared it with a friend who was drinking red wine in her new white carpet, and she was like, Suzanne, you should have warned me. I spat it everywhere. So this is how we connected via this song that you created for me. And anything else you want to say about it? While you're talking, I'll go see if I can find it.
I think the only thing I want to say about it, I do want to acknowledge it will get stuck in your head. So if that's not something you're looking to have happen today and for the rest of your fucking life, maybe skip this part. I also want to offer that this is one of my favorite ways to help people get their fucks back, is to find humor and to like step back from the thing that's happening and depersonalize it. Because in this particular situation, you had said, I remember asking you, like, what the fuck did you say in this email to garner such an indignant response? And then you shared it, and you can share it if you want to. I won't tell your story without your permission here. But I was absolutely floored by how completely like inoffensive this email was. And then it generated such like an over the top response. And I laughed so hard. It was just so utterly absurd. And I think that what Suzanne just described is like, we kind of like, oh my God, I did it wrong. What have I done? This is so horrible. Like, this is the end of the world. I'm a terrible person. All of these things. We're so quick to internalize this stuff. And when we can pause and just say, okay, what's actually the simplest explanation here? What's like the Occam's razor answer to this situation? Is it actually that I've been like a horrible monster my entire life and nobody noticed until this person who I've only ever interacted with through email discovered the truth about me? Or is it that like maybe this guy's just kind of a dick? Like, what's the simplest explanation here? Is it that like my life is over and everything's ruined and I should never interact with human beings again? Or is it this was hilarious and ridiculous and I never have to think about it again unless it entertains me? It's usually the second one, you guys. It's very infrequently you. Now, if you're like walking around like punching babies and like kicking dogs or something, it's definitely you. But other than that scenario, it's like almost always the other person, and you don't have to take that shit on. So that was kind of the premise of this whole conversation, and it was fucking hilarious.
I love that, and I also love the there's something I was going to share. Oh yeah, because you were like, "What's in the email?" And it was funny. The group, everyone's like, "We need to see the email. We need to see the email." And it was the most tame email I've ever sent. There wasn't any swearing in there. So I think sometimes too, we don't know what other people have going on, and that is okay, but that doesn't mean we need to accept behavior like this email. So when I share the song in a moment, basically Kristen sings the email to music. This is what the email said to me. But it was like, this is the difference between being compassionate and being a doormat. So it's like, I have so much compassion for whatever this person has going on. And if you somehow stumble across this podcast, our intention is not to make fun of you. This is nothing to do with what you have going on. But for me, like for the event and what happened in me in this, like we don't realize how our offhand comment, like I remember when I was very new in business, one of the first emails I sent, my email list originally consisted of my mum and 2 of my sisters who have now unsubscribed, or I have unsubscribed them. But anyway, my sister wrote back and she's like, I can't believe you charge for this. Who would pay someone who can't even spell? And you don't know how much that little comment, who's having a hard day themselves or who's unsure. And I remember very recently talking to my own coach about an experience of something similar to that I'd had. And she's like, unless they're in the arena, like unless they're a coach too or an entrepreneur too or whatever it else, why would you even consider their feedback? Because like even putting out this podcast, Kristen and I said it's done with a whole lot of love and very little perfectionism. We don't do our makeup. Well, I think here it's kind of brushed, and it's just a conversation. If you want polished and stuff, it's not us.
Yeah. And that's such an important point. And part of why I think that some of these things are so funny and I'm able to really like see them as like, that person is just like going through some shit. It has nothing to do with me, but now it's a great story. Is that there have been so many times that I have been that person, right? Like there have been so many times that like I was the asshole. And it doesn't mean, well, I guess caveat, like I am kind of an asshole, but like in a fun way, right? Like I'm okay with that. Like no shame here. But like it doesn't mean that like I am fundamentally an asshole because something like triggered me or tripped me up and I didn't realize it and I had a reaction to it. It just means that I'm human. And like the person who sent this email is just human and they were just having a human moment. And we can take that on and mean that like we're doing humaning wrong. Or we can say, man, that must have been a shitty ass day for that to have happened. But moving on, and we can just carry on with our lives because it's not our job to attend to everybody else's emotions all the time. Obviously, we want to be responsible for the impact of our words and our behavior on other people and make sure that we're willing to carry that through. But like, if you don't like me, you should just go find somebody you like. I don't need to change. You just don't like me. It's fine. And like that's totally okay. And when we can like lighten it up like that and remember all the times that we were completely ridiculous or had disproportionate reactions to stuff, it can really take the sting out of it and just let it be like a fun human moment.
I love that so much, especially the part we don't have to tend to other people's emotions. Like that's their job. And the same as, and there are also times, there are times where I'm like, well, I'm not proud of that. That wasn't my finest moment. And then it's kind of like the people close to me, oh, Susie's having a bad day. It makes me think of Harry Potter. In which one is it when Lupin first turns into the werewolf and then he kind of gets bashed up by the Sirius and then bashed up by the hippogriff and then Hermione's like, oh, Professor Lupin's having a bad day.
Yeah.
But I might be 5 because 4 is Goblet of Fire.
Oh yeah, maybe
it's 5. But it's like Professor Lupin's having a bad day.
Yeah, but here's the thing: that's such a great example, right? Because it's the same one where they're learning how to defend against the boggarts, and like Harry's learning his how to cast his Patronus. And here's the thing: when we can look at this stuff, well, actually, back up in case there's anyone left on the world who doesn't have a basic working vocabulary around like the Harry Potter universe. A boggart is a magical creature that will take the form of whatever scares you the most if you're the person looking at it. So for me, my boggart might look like a tidal wave because I have an irrational fear of tidal waves since early childhood, despite never having experienced one. I don't know I'm pretty sure it was because I watched the movie The Poseidon Adventure when I was too young, but it could also have been reinforced by the children's book Island of the Blue Dolphins. But in any event, I have this irrational feel of tidal waves. So my boggart would look like a tidal wave, most likely, because it transforms to be whatever is scariest for you. So there's all this stuff that happens out in the world that because we have this fear, we see these things as though it's like the boggart that transformed into our worst fear. And maybe we really are afraid that we're doing it wrong, that we shouldn't have done that thing, whatever, and someone else's reaction that has absolutely nothing to do with us takes the form of the thing that we fear the most, which is inadequacy, fucking up, like whatever that is, right? And the cure for a boggart, the way to like take the power out of it and to make it not scary is the ridiculous charm. And you just say like ridiculous, and you transform the boggart into a funny version of itself. And I can't come up with one for tidal waves because I'm still too scared of them. But if like you're afraid of spiders, for example, one of the characters who's in the scene is terrified of spiders, and when he casts the ridiculous charm, the big spider, it has roller skates and it's like falling all over the place, and it's completely silly and ridiculous. So like that is the thing that takes these moments and has them not have power over us anymore. And then we can totally, this is so Harry Potter, I'm such a nerd right now. We can totally protect ourselves from that shit even coming up by getting really good at our protection charms, our Patronus charms. And the thing that has us be protected from like the bad shit, the scary shit, the shit that wants to hurt us is boundaries. Boundaries are your Patronus charm. And when you learn how to ridiculous the scary shit and then put up the boundaries to protect yourself from the stuff that's going to suck the life out of you, that's like 98% of everything, right? Like that is the important stuff. And that's why like these conversations and like being able to find the humor and depersonalize the shit is so powerful. It's like a magic spell.
I love that, how
Crazy.
inadvertently we've created in this podcast. So that hater email for terms for me in business, like in life, spiders all the way. I'm with Ron, though.
Yeah.
Looking at them on roller skates would not be my ridiculous. Need to be something else. But sending an email and getting such a troll type response in business is my like, I cannot deal with this. And then your song is the ridiculous. So now sometimes when I'm about to send an email and I'm like, I don't know how this is going to be received, or I don't know, like I play that song or I sing it because, you know, it's an earworm. You guys will hear it. It's like, oh, and then you just do it.
Yeah, that is your magic spell. That is the charm that you get to cast anytime. And like there's other ones, but those two, like the boundaries, the Patronus charm of boundaries and the ridiculous charm of like finding the humor and depersonalizing this stuff. Oh my God, if that's the only thing that you ever get from me, that shit will change your life. I'm telling you what, it is a legitimate game changer.
100%. Anything you want to add, Kristen?
Just that I find this so fascinating. So the work that I do, Kristen, is around minerals and mineral balancing and reducing stress in the body through what you eat, what you do. And one of the big things that I say to people is that you can't get rid of stress. Humans, the nature of us is that we live stressful lives. But how we choose to respond to stress, that makes a big difference. So as you gain self-awareness on what triggers your body into fight or flight mode outside of, because what nourishment and where our minerals are at can actually have us in fight or flight without looking at anything external. So if we can start to look at that side of things, but then it's really important to look at what happens around us. And so many people don't recognize that they're living in a constant fight or flight state, and everything that you've just been describing contributes to that. So you can have someone who's got physical pain, aches, diagnoses, whatever, and everything that you've just described can go a really long way to subsiding chronic pain, all sorts of ongoing conditions, sleep problems, adrenal fatigue, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I'm a big proponent of what goes in the mouth, but what goes in the brain and how we choose to respond to it, it's a huge part, because that can trigger the fight or flight response. And anyone who's had a heart rate increase because of an email received, or a spider that crawls out, or it doesn't matter what the thing is. So this analogy, it applies beautifully to all of that. So if you can start to make different choices as far as what boundaries you keep, what you allow in, historically, we're conditioned a lot of the time to respond in a certain way. If you start to go, that doesn't really serve me anymore, I don't want to tolerate that, and then find what you can do instead, it's the same thing. It's what are you going to use as your Patronus to protect you? That stress is not going to go away, but how you choose to respond to it, that can absolutely change. It takes practice. It's like a muscle though. It still needs developing. It's like Harry in the movies, right? He didn't get it right until he really, really needed it. but it's probably best to try it when we're not at our most stressed, because that's the other aspect, right? If you're in the midst of a situation where you're really reactive and whatever to what's going on, that's not the best time to be trying to use that muscle. It's actually practicing it when you're calmer and because the brain, when you're in fight flight mode, is not in the right, literally, frame of mind to be able to deal with it. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing I took away from what you just said then is life isn't about avoiding our boggarts, like locking them in the cupboard and, you know, pretending they're not there. It's, you know, strengthening the ridiculous and strengthening the patronus so that you can manage it when it happens. Because I think, you know, one of the things about being in business is you're going to piss some people off unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, depending on what you're sharing. But, you know, the bigger you get in business, or the bigger your audience is, or the more people who come across your stuff, someone is going to have a reaction. And as you know, you guys have both stated, it has often nothing to do with you at all. Because like I shared a post the other day, I don't know if either of you saw it, but it was like what happens if a client sees you saying fuck online? Me, well, it prepares them for when I say it in session.
Exactly. That's 100% it. And like my mom will say things to me like, oh my God, Kristen, I can't believe you said, you know, fuck online. And I'm like, well, Mom, I don't want people to be surprised when they meet me in person and it's like every other fucking word. Like what you see is what you get. This is truth in advertising. And it's an amazing client filter, right? If we're looking at business, the best way to bring in clients, customers, whatever, who are the ones you actually want to work with, is to be who you actually are. Because the ones who aren't looking for that are going to self-select out. And that's why it's so important to not censor yourself, right? There's a difference between censoring and editing. Like I try not to say fuck too often around my husband's 90-something-year-old great grandfather, because he's lived a long life and it makes him uncomfortable, and it doesn't in any way harm me to pick a different word for the hour that we spend together, right? Like no big deal. That's just editing. But censoring would be pretending like I don't say fuck the rest of the time. It's just not true, right?
I love that
And
frame,
like,
censoring and editing, because there are some clients who I work with one-to-one who aren't particularly fond of the swearing. So I do attempt to edit. Sometimes it comes out because it's just the way I am, and they're like, we don't want you to not be you. Like, we get it. But I do try to be mindful if they prefer the less salty language. But in terms of, you know, marketing, messaging, sending my emails, otherwise being me, because, and this leads back to the people-pleasing energy, which all three of us have clients of. When we are so busy trying to be everything to everybody, like oftentimes people would say, oh, I'd work with you if you didn't swear. I'd work with you if your program wasn't on Facebook. I'd work with you with this. I'd work with you with that. Really underlying all that, the person doesn't want to do the work. They don't want to admit it to themselves. So they're trying to make you change how you are. And it's just kind of like we contortion pretzel ourselves into all of these places to please everybody. And the person who's displeased is us. And then we end up burning out, overeating, staying up late, watching Netflix, feeling like shit, and wondering why we've created a life that we feel so disconnected from.
Yeah. Well, and going back to what not Kristen, was saying a minute ago, it's kind of like a pot on the stove, right? Like we have a pot of water on the stove, and like we all have like a set point temperature inside ourselves. And just imagine like a pot with like it's a gas stove, the burner's all flaming, whatever, and the water's heating up, right? Like we all have a set point in us. And every like instance of stress, every instance of saying yes to someone else when we really want to say no, every instance where we put other people's needs and desires above what we really want, and we don't enjoy doing that. It's not from like the goodness of our heart and true generosity and love and whatever, right? Every instance where we're like saying no to ourselves instead of saying no to someone else and we really want to, it raises the temperature, right? All the over commitments that we make, all of the food that we eat that makes us feel like shit, all of these things that we do, they all raise the temperature. And so the water gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And then it only takes one more degree of increase for it to be boiling. And then you've got a freaking mess. And when I'm talking to people about this in the US, they'll be like, because in Fahrenheit, water boils at 212 degrees, in case you didn't know that.
I did not know that. You learn something every day.
So it boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'll say, okay, so you're spending your whole life at 211 degrees. We need to bring your temp down so you have more resilience, so you have more space to respond to these things. So little inconveniences and little, sensitivities and whatever don't have shit explode all over your figurative stove, because that's what happens. It boils at 100 degrees Celsius. I don't know what the equivalent increase or decrease would be for that, because my math skills and my Celsius skills are terrible, but you get the gist, right? It's like, it's about bringing the set point down so we have more space to work with. And that's what gives us more options. And when we get really good at our ridiculous charms and our patroni, whatever, our patronus, like, we can keep bringing the temperature down and down and down and down. And that's what getting your fucks back does. It's like turning off the burner and letting the water cool. It's amazing.
And what's so good about that too is when, like, with this email from this person, they might have been at 211, as you said, and that email is what sent them to the 212. So then
that was the thing.
Cop the receiving end of that, and then I start to question if I'm not strong and my boundaries aren't strong and I don't have my ridiculous charm like this. So I'm getting higher and higher and closer to boiling. And you can see the knock-on effect of this going forward and forward and forward, when really if we take the time to manage our own things and like say, oh, I just love that line from the movie, Professor Lupin's having a bad day. Like I say that all the time with things with my kids. It's like, they're just having a bad day. I don't make it mean anything about them as a person or, my love for them. It's just kind of like, they're having a moment. But we don't often get to see that more outside of, family units, because we're just like, it was just one email. Like,
yeah. And it can be like, I remember the content of the email, right? Maybe this person had been carrying around a deep sense of shame about that particular topic, that particular tool, that particular strategy. And it's been, they've been carrying that around for a while. We have no idea. But it's kind of like if I say like, oh, no, thank you, I don't smoke or something like that. And someone is like, how dare you tell me I shouldn't smoke? And I'm like, I didn't. Yes. I just told you I don't want to. Right. But like when we're already sensitive about it, when other people have been on us about something, you can just be like sensitivity to XYZ walking around in the world, and then you bump into it and there's an explosion. But it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the thing you bumped into. It was just the 1 degree difference between you really kind of holding it together and you boiling over. And that's it's not anybody's fault. It's just a thing that happens when humans rub up against other humans, right? And there's lots of ways for us to do that, especially
I think that's
online.
Such a good point. So the email was about journaling. I was running a journaling masterclass. And I think, whenever we find a tool or we have a tool or something, like smoking is such a great example. I don't smoke personally. I don't have any qualms about people who do. Like that's, their choice about what to do. I wouldn't enter a smoking home, but I'm not saying you shouldn't smoke in your own home. What you do in your own home is totally up to you. And I think sometimes when we have something that we're passionate about, and like I've dropped half my body weight. So it's funny when I go around some people, they're worried that I'm going to judge what they eat. I couldn't give a shit what they eat. Like I've met up with Kristen in person, and you were laughing because I can't remember what I ordered, and you're like, you're the least unhealthiest healthy person I've ever met. But I don't care what other people eat, but they will have assumptions that I must be looking at what they have and this sort of thing. But that's their unpacking to do, not mine.
And I get the same thing. So often I've got a little group of people around here in our local community who have known me as I've learned more about the minerals and whatever else. And they'll be like, don't look at what I'm eating. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not judging. Like, eat whatever you want to eat. It's going in your body. You make the choices. I don't look at everybody else's plates and go, oh, you should not be eating that. I don't care, but they're worried what I'm thinking, where I'm thinking about what I'm doing for work the next day or what we're doing to sort out kids in that moment. And I think we each need to be aware of that, of what's scary, like sitting as an underlying fear, and how will I must do this, I must do that, because we're thinking that someone else is looking. They're not necessarily looking at all.
Yeah. And like if the thing that we're concerned about other people saying comes up, like it doesn't matter if we're not concerned about it, right? Like if
Yeah.
someone came up to me and was like, your short hair looks ridiculous, I would be like, oh, okay. For those of you who are just listening to audio, my hair is like down to my nipples. Like my hair is quite long. Like I'm not concerned that my hair is too short. So if like someone has short hair and they're looking at my hair, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, they're judging my hair for being too long. Right. But if I'm worried that like I'm a terrible mother and my kid is like, being a normal like asshole tween doing something stupid in public and someone is like looking at me and looking at them, I might be like, oh my God, they think I'm a terrible mother. And then I like yell at my kid to stop doing what they're doing. Now, that's not a situation that typically occurs for me, but it is for a lot of my clients because they doubt themselves, right? That someone will
Yeah.
respond badly to like one of their marketing messages and they already think they don't market well. And so they take it really personally and it bothers them because it already bothered them and they just bumped up against that thing around in the world, and it's
They're
okay, it
already
doesn't
at
have
like
anything to do.
210 degrees
They're
there, and
already at
somebody's thing.
211 in that, and then it hits them and it goes over. But like if you don't care about that thing, if you're solid in it yourself, other people's thoughts and opinions about it don't matter. So the places where you
Yes.
have these fears, the places where you're like constantly concerned that people are thinking this, is because you're thinking it. And
Yeah.
it's not like it doesn't matter what other people think, because even if they think you're the best at whatever it is you're worried about, you don't. So you're never going to feel good about it. And that's where we want to put our energy, not in trying to convince other people. Like anytime you think you need to convince somebody else, that is your cue that you need to convince yourself,
That's such
right?
a great
Because like
example
your
because
your
there are
friends,
things that don't bother you. Someone
yeah.
commented on my hair, wouldn't care. Somebody told me I was
Mhm.
dumb. It was funny. I said something yesterday, I can't remember what it was, and it was such a great example because I'm like, oh, that's a dumb thing to do. And anyway, my
Mhm.
son Casimir just started crying, and I was like, what's wrong? He's like, you called me dumb. And I was like, oh, hang on, we need to have a discussion here, honey. I said, you
Mhm.
are not dumb in any way, shape, or form. That is the dumb thing to do. And this is the difference between like guilt and shame. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like, but he's really sensitive about it. Whereas everyone said that to me, it wouldn't bother me at all because that's not,
Right.
so it's something for me to be mindful of, once again, editing and not, but distinguishing ourselves from our behavior. Like I had a tech fail. It's like not I'm a failure as a person. And I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves in business or in our career to like so much is riding on this. And it's like, really? Like I was saying to somebody the other day, I left the medical field for a reason. No one's going to die in coaching. Like there is no emergencies in coaching. If you're trying to call me at 2 a.m., then chances are, and it's a real emergency, please go to the hospital. Like there is nothing that I can do for you.
Yeah.
So where is it in space is, is this really such an emergency, or are we putting a lot of pressure on ourselves because we're getting too hot? And what is that a sign of some self-care that we need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And the stuff that like you've made your peace with, the stuff that you don't carry around shame about, when people mention it and point it out, you don't care. Like I am, so example from someone that Suzanne and I have in common, our friend and coach Simone Soul, who is the genius behind the community where we met. I'm taking a coach certification with her right now, and it's really fucking good. It is called the best, what is it? The
The
best
best
fucking
fucking
coaching
coaching
certification or
course.
something, or yeah, the best
Oh, it's a
fucking coaching course. And
certification.
it
I don't
really
know.
is. It's so fucking
BFCC.
good. Yeah, BFCC. So I had written a post on social media where I was like raving about how great it is. And I shared the way that I think about the difference between like the unconscious mind and the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, because it was a conversation that had come up. And so I wrote this whole long thing. And then Simone commented on it and she was like, thank you for the long testimonial. And I laughed so hard. And my response was, like, when have you ever known me to write anything short? And we had like a good laugh about it. She wasn't criticizing me, and I am not defensive about the fact that I never fucking shut up, because it's one of my favorite things about myself, right? Now, someone else who thinks they should be taking up less space, which is most of my clients when they first come to me, is going to be horrified by that. and it's going to carry that around and be like, my coach thinks I wrote too long. Like, no, my coach sees me for exactly who I am and loves me, and I do too. And this gets to be like a fun thing between us because we know that this is how I am and it's fun and we both like it, or else we wouldn't hang out with me. Right. And like, that's the difference. That's the difference.
And I think when you give fewer fucks, it really helps you let go of that perfectionism archetype. Because I'm just thinking this podcast is an example. When Kristen and I first put it out, the initial feedback was things, and often people have the best of intentions. They're like, oh, you should number your episodes. Oh, we want a transcript. Oh, all this sort of stuff. And for a very small moment, I started to spin out in like all the things that were wrong about it. And then I was like, hold up. We do a podcast because we like to talk. If we like to write, we would have written a blog. It's kind of like, so now when people say, oh, I like this or I like this, I don't take that as a personal attack about what's wrong with my thing. It's like, you're allowed to like all sorts of things and have preferences, but this is how I deliver my work.
Yeah. I used to teach Zumba, and I don't know, like, I don't know if, have either of you ever done Zumba, like dance fitness? Okay.
Yep.
So I'm not a gifted dancer. That is not one of my gifts to share with the universe necessarily. But I love it. And I'm a good Zumba instructor. I'm not a gifted dancer, but I'm good at, the things that I do. And in the very beginning, when I first started teaching dance fitness classes, I was very nervous about like messing up the choreography, and I'd like forget what I was doing, or it wouldn't look as cool as someone else. And then people would think like that person should be teaching the class, not me. And I grappled with that for a little while. This was like years ago. It's taken me, I've been in a better place with it for a long time. But initially I was like, oh my God, I have to be like a professional dancer to be like teaching this class. And then I'm like, the class is somewhere between like $3 and $8. And like, if you want perfection, if you want a professional dancer, you should go pay for a different class. But this is more than good enough for a class that is somewhere between $0 and $8. And if you have a problem with that, I encourage you to go give that money to someone else. Like, this is just what it is, man. If you don't like it, go take a different class.
But also, too, when I think about it, I am very uncoordinated and whatever. I would feel much more personally comfortable going to a class with somebody who's, let's just have some fucking fun, than somebody who looks like they came from Juilliard. I'd be like, I do not belong in this room.
Yeah. All that matters. And that, like, I added it to like my opening spiel, which I don't like remember anymore. But it was basically like, the steps do not matter. All that matters is that you are having fun and listening to your body. So like, if you don't like what I'm doing, just do something else. But if someone's coming in your direction, get out of the way. Right? Like, that's it. Like, there'd be times where like in the middle of the song, I would be like, I'd just like stand there. I'd be like, I got distracted. I have no idea what's supposed to be happening right now. And we would just like, we'd just like do like solos or whatever until one of us remembered what was supposed to be happening in that moment. And then we'd be like, oh, I got it. And we just jump back in. And guess what? 100% survival rate. None of us died from that. Not even me. And I was the teacher. I didn't die one time from forgetting what I was doing in the middle of doing it. I never have. I'm like fucking killing it. Statistically, I will live forever in the presence of fucking something up. It's going to be great.
I love that so much. That.
All right, we got to do the song before we forget about it.
Okay, I was going to say, we'll probably wrap up shortly, but before we do, Kristen, how can people find you, work with you, like take the stage?
Yeah, so the best place to see what I'm up to and to get in touch with me is going to be on social media. I am very prolific, as you may have discerned from our conversation, particularly on my personal Facebook page. So do you like, if I send you like links and stuff, will you guys
I'll post them in the show notes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So yeah, so my name on social media is Kristen King, which is my maiden name, and it's a weird spelling, so I'll just give you the link. But come find me there. And I also have a free email list called the Zero Fucks Gazette that I send out whenever the fuck I feel like it. So sometimes you'll get like 5 in a week, and sometimes you won't hear from me for a month, but it's always like really fucking good. So you can sign up for that. I constantly share that on my socials. There's also a link on my website, which is just kristenking.com. And I have the next round of my group is actually kicking off in just a couple weeks. We will be starting on February 8th. My group is called 100 Days to Fewer Fucks. And we spend 15 weeks together systematically going through all of the different areas of your life and reclaiming your fucks, your time, your energy, your attention, your priorities from shit that doesn't actually matter to you. So you can refocus it on the shit that does. And it is really fucking fun. We have like weekly calls. We have a Facebook group. We're all hilarious and delightful. And that shit will change your fucking life. And the next round starts February 8th. So if you're hearing this on like February 9th, contact me anyway. I will get you in. It's fine. We'll make it work. But it is really, really fun. I also work with people one-on-one, and that's like ongoing. But the next round of 100 Days to Fewer Fucks is in just a couple weeks. So I hope you come check it out.
I love the name of your program. Like, I love that so much.
Thank you.
Kristen, anything you want to add before I play the song?
No, I think we've covered it all, and it's been lovely to have you on. Thank you for coming, Kristen, and the KKs take over.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
All right, here we go. Without further ado, I'm just going to share the screen for a moment so that the sound is shared. Now, if I hit play, is it coming up? No, it's not saying she's in sharing sound. Bloody hell. Oh, but it says sound. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. If I hit play, you guys let me know if you hear it. If not, I'll sort something out. Can you hear anything?
No.
Oh, that's all right.
You might. I saw it like starting to share for a second, and then it like blipped away. So it may have like interrupted itself or something.
Because I just want to share the sound. I don't want to share my actual screen, which is.
Oh, I think you have to share both.
Audio. I might have figured it out.
Go now.
Try it again. Are you ready? Here we go.
Time to break it down, y'all. You know what? Fuck off and stop sending me shit. Fuck off and stop sending me shit. Just when I thought I was getting ready to entrust you, you send me a degrading message. Fuck off and stop sending me shit. Fuck off and stop sending me shit. Regards. Fuck off.
So there you have it. And one thing to note, when you are going to tell somebody to fuck off, please make sure that you say regards. What I laughed about that message so much, it wasn't a footer. Like, that text was exactly what the email said, and then regards the person's name, which I kept private. So if you are the person and you hate following me now, don't worry, nobody knows who you are except me. But I just thought that was so funny.
It was so great. And I have to tell you, I not only do I sing that song constantly and rock out in my own head, but I've also like applied it to other life situations. My dog has decided that like when the humans are eating, like she also should be eating at the table. And so I started singing to her, fuck off and stop begging for shit. Fuck off. And like you can apply it to so many areas of your life, and you get to like ridiculous this all over the fucking place. And I highly recommend it.
I do this for my kids too. Fuck off. Stop asking me for shit.
Yeah. So
it has amazing
welcome.
applications. And now if you're listening to the podcast and you need to hear it again, you could just, back right up and listen as often as you need to. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kristen. Thank you for being here again, Kristen. If you're listening, we would really love a review. And if you're not much of a writer, then just give us 5 stars like an Uber. We would totally appreciate that. That's it for today. Thank you, everybody. See you on the next one.